our viewers. My name is Lucy Jeffrey. Welcome again to the Entrepreneur TV show. We are delighted to have you, and we are happy to bring you professionals in the London community and business owners so you can know who to deal with when you are doing business, and also so we can learn from them. But before we do that, I would like to remind you that this show has sponsors that sponsor it. That's why we have been able to run this show for 4 years, and our sponsors are none other than the Entrepreneur Nation. The Entrepreneur Nation is a business development group. It's a referral group that we created in London, Ontario, and grew countrywide. And we mainly serve licensed professionals, and we find that they work very well to serve the business community in London. Our newest sponsor for this show is Alex Valili. And Alex Valili is a commercial litigation lawyer with Mackenzie Lake Lawyers. He works a lot to serve businesses. So whenever your business is involved in a litigation, he can be able to serve you and help you. Today, we have a great guest. I'm bringing you a guest that we have never had before, that is operating in the field that we are going to learn, and that has been in business for over 30 years, and is coming in to really help us to learn more about what he has been doing and how he's supporting young professionals. So John Finan is the president of Finan Home Service, and when I turn the screen, we'll have John with us. Hello, John. Welcome.
Hi, Lucy. Nice to be here with you.
Awesome. We've really talked a lot, and I'm so happy to learn what you're doing, and it's wonderful that our viewers get to know what you're doing as well.
Yeah, I hope so.
So welcome to the show. Now, what I wanted to say, John, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And for you having been in business for over 30 years, you already know that. But I want our viewers to get to know you a little bit more before you even start in the business. We like following history. So tell us a little bit about you before you started your own business.
Sure. Well, it's going back a long way. I've been in business for 30 years, but thanks for asking. So, I don't often share this, but I know a lot of people around town, and maybe the backstory isn't something that the average friend of mine would know about. But I finished my high school career at the end of grade 12 at Lucas High School in London. And incidentally, that was my 11th school, my third high school. Our family, for all kinds of personal and chaotic reasons, moved around a lot. So we lived in Peterborough, Lindsay, Mississauga, Oakville, Etobicoke, Tillsonburg, and then finally settled for the last stop here in London. And essentially, I've stayed. I've liked it here. But my family growing up was not a stable place. It was not a place where people stayed married to each other and or even stayed together. So that just led to a lot of moving around. And when I finished grade 12, my intent actually was go to grade 13 and on to university, but I did so poorly in grade 12, as you would expect somebody in my situation may very well have, that I ended up in a one-year college program before I transferred into university, and spent a couple of years at university, which really I should never have gone to. And all I did was, accumulate a good bit of debt and no real education, no job skills. So on my 21st birthday, the Dean of Social Sciences, where I'd ended up at that point, sent me a letter and said, fine, and you're fired. You've been here for 2 years and you don't belong here, and we're getting rid of you. And oh, by the way, you can spend the next 7 years paying the money back that essentially we've lent you to be here. So that was how I got started. I was 23 and in debt, broke, no job skills. Welcome to the world.
Wow, welcome to that world, John. But I'm
Right.
happy that you are able to figure things out and move forward. And usually you are a role model for many young people, and we are going to talk about that as we proceed. But just because I want to follow your history and that's a success path, so then you left university, then what?
Sure.
You ended up being in skill trained. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I didn't quite get there at that point. So, for whatever reason, my father died when I was in high school, and I ended up having my brother and his wife had just been married, and they realized that, hey, this my sister-in-law realized this boy probably needs a stable home for once. So I lived with them for most of high school, and my brother had started a business. He'd started a swimming school. And I'd always liked that business. I was there at the beginning when he started it. One of the first jobs I had after I got my driver's license was driving kids around to deliver flyers to get this swimming school started, which incidentally my daughter now runs, and it's been in business for well over 40 years. So I had that bug. So I got that letter from the dean on my 21st birthday, which was on the 20th of June. And 10 days later, I'm on my way to Ottawa. I hadn't actually moved, but I was on my way to Ottawa in a borrowed car, and I hitchhiked back there in September, and I lived there for the rest of about a year and a half, trying to get that swimming business that I wanted to start started. And, doing what young people do, which is struggling and learning and trying, and ultimately, in that case, not succeeding. And I ended up back with my mom and her third husband at that point, and living on the couch for a couple of years. And that's then I got to the point where I realized it's time to get into something that would be a job, but yet if I wanted to have a business, I could have. And my brother had actually suggested the trade, so we drove around and we watched a couple of trades, and I had zero inclination for the trades. You wouldn't have said I was a handy person. There weren't tools around. I had no relatives that did this kind of work. But when I went and looked, we watched a bricklayer for about an hour, and I went, wow, that's really difficult work. I'm not sure that I want to be doing that for my whole life. But we watched a couple of other ones, and the electrician that we watched, something about that person must have spoke to me, because that's the journey that I went on. And at the time I knew that, if I started in the career as an electrician and I got my training and I started a business and it worked out, that would be wonderful. But if it didn't, at least I could backstop that with actual job. And that's how I got started in the trades.
Wonderful. Really great to know that it didn't start really well, but then finally you got to do it the right way and deciding what you want to do, so you became an electrician. I wanted to ask you then, do you want to, I don't mind you letting our viewers know the services that are offered at Finan Home Service. And I'm happy that you reminded us the name is Finan. So our
Yeah,
viewers, that's how the name is pronounced. So
that's
what
right.
services do they offer there?
Yeah, well, it's funny you say. Most people call it Finan, and I had a tagline for many years. It was "Fine and Dandy Service," so people would pronounce it right. But I was the only one that used that, so we
Yes.
stopped that years ago. But as an electrician, of course, the first number of years we're just doing electrical work, and that was took us about to 2005 or six. And then at that point, I realized that the business had actually grown to the point that at some point I might be able to sell this business. That, far too young and far too small at that time to think about exactly that. But I thought at some point I'll be able to sell this business. And one of the problems that I had is that we would go in and we would rewire, as we still do today. We would change fuse panels to breaker panels. We would rewire older homes to newer homes. And the problem with that is those customers would literally never need to call in my lifetime, which means the business probably didn't have a lot of value if I was to sell it. I've got lots of customers that I used to work for, but they're not coming back again, at least in that house. And I started joining some best practices group, which I always encourage people. You need to learn. And after about 10 years of beating my head against the wall, I realized that, hey, maybe somebody else has got some ideas that could help me. And I joined a group which mostly met in the United States. So I would go down to various conferences, and there would be, electrical guys that were doing much better than we were. And there would be plumbing companies, and there would be furnace and air conditioning companies. And it didn't take me long to realize that, the guys in the furnace and air conditioning companies and the plumbing guys, they seemed to be wearing nicer clothes than us. And when they talked about their homes, they were probably nicer than what we lived in. And I thought there might be something to that. And not to mention the fact that, you put in a furnace, it needs to be maintained, and it's not going to last for 3 generations like the wiring. So we quickly realized that we could add services, because at that point, after 10 or 11 years of running the business, I wasn't on the tools all the time. And I said to myself, I'm not going to be able to fix furnaces, but that's okay. I know about customer service. I know about treating people well, and I know about how to price our services accordingly. And I think we can do this. So it started a little bit of a growth trend that included purchasing businesses. We were finding contractors that were looking to exit, retire, like maybe one day I wanted to do, and purchase their company. And that's how we grew. So to answer your question, Finan does electrical work, it does plumbing work, and it does furnace and air conditioning work, primarily in residential homes, like not new homes necessarily, but existing homes. So if somebody wakes up in the morning and something in their house isn't working, we've got staff here that are ready to take the phone call, and technicians that are ready to get dispatched and fix that problem.
Awesome. Thank you for that, John. So I hear that the business has grown. You've purchased other business. Um, you've gone through leadership skills, but we know that with any growth of any business, it comes with excitements and challenges. So there's the ups and downs of growing a business. Can you
Mhm.
talk to us about the challenges that you faced while growing your business, and even up to today? And how have you dealt with those challenges?
Sure. The short answer is just soldiering through. You know, some people have a greater ability to put up with the rocks that get thrown at them in life, and I, for whatever reason, seem to be comfortable with that. So, I think in the midst of it, I just dealt with any challenge as it came up, and I knew sort of where we were going, which was just grow the business, make sure customers are always treated well, make sure staff is treated well. I'm the steward of the company, so make sure the company is stewarded well, and I have to balance all three of those. And as long as I'm doing that and not stopping, at some point the wind direction will change. It'll be more on my back than it was on my front, and things will get better. But like any business person, there's all of those things going on in the business, but those same challenges go on personally. And my wife and I celebrated our 32nd wedding anniversary just last month, and so of course we'd only been married for 10 or 15 years, which seems like a long time, but anybody that's been married for over 30 years realizes that you take about 20 years before you consider yourself not to be a rookie anymore. And we had small children, and anybody that's got small children realizes that there's all kinds of challenges, not just with your time, but are you doing the right things for the kids? Are you spending enough time with them? Are you exposing them to all the right things? So you're really balancing not just the business, but the marriage, and of course the personal life. And as I mentioned, we had rental properties as well, so we had to balance all of those things off. When something breaks at a tenant's property, it really doesn't matter what's going on in my life. It needs to be fixed. If they don't pay the rent, the mortgage still needs to be paid. So, I feel like in some ways, gravity, if you can think of it this way, was a little bit higher on us at that stage, which made us much more resilient as we got older, and much better skilled at making decisions when bad things happen, because bad things will always happen. And it took me 15 years to realize that that was going to be the case throughout my life.
Thank you so much, John, for
Sure.
doing that. So now I understand where you're coming from. But they say that the life of an entrepreneur growing a business is a lonely journey. It's a lonely path. I appreciate that your wife was supporting you, but outside of your home, how was it? Do you feel like it was lonely? Did you get great employees to support you along the way? Was it lonely for you, or how did you make it work?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is, and it was, and it still is. That doesn't stop. And I think, the necessity of the role means that it should be that way. As I said, I have to balance the objectives of the company, the customers, and the staff members. And if I'm too entrenched in any one group, or thinking too much about the company or too much about a staff member, I just can't balance that well. So, I've always tried to have a circle of friends. A couple of weekends ago, I think I mentioned I went to three high schools, so I'm still in touch with at least two groups from two of those high schools all the time. I spent the weekend with one of my high school buddies from over 40 years ago, and I just was emailing another one a short minute ago about getting together to see a new movie that comes out. So I always make sure that I've kept those social things. And just before we started this interview, I've been a Rotary member for almost as long as I've been in business, I think 28 years. And I continue to do that. It's a time commitment for sure, but it allows me to get away from the business and talk to other people in a setting that isn't focused strictly on the business. And I think that does help to some degree with the loneliness. And, as I get older, I have, the hindsight is a little bit better. And when I look back, it allowed me to be more of a balanced person. I don't just have one thing that I do. I have many things that I do, many relationships, many groups of relationships as well. And I think that that's important, because yes, it was lonely in the beginning. It was lonely in the middle. To some degrees, it's still exactly the same, and it will continue to be the same way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. John, I wanted us to focus now on leadership. And I know from what you have told us, that's something you have really focused on yourself. Now, you lead a very large company with over 30 employees. So how are the challenges when it comes with dealing with a large company like that? And how can you describe your leadership that has helped you to sail through?
Sure. So, I'm by no means an expert, barely got through high school, dropped out of university. Um, Leadership isn't something that I think about. I just think about being John Finan every day, and whatever that is and how it presents itself to people around me. That's the way it's going to be. So, but in terms of leadership, I would say I'm probably more hands off. Certainly when it comes to the technical side of things, when it comes to the electrical work, even. I mean, I've been off the tools for many years, but there's guys and ladies that are out there doing the work of the electricians, the plumbers, the furnace and air conditioning technicians, and a few other things that we do. They know the technical part of their job as well, and probably greater than I do. My job is really just to make sure the flow of work is there for them, and they understand what their obligations to the company are and to themselves, and sort of pointing out the good things they do for sure all the time, and where they can improve, and what they need to do to serve customers and the company better. And for those that take those lessons, I think it's a great environment. For those that think maybe more of themselves than they do of the company or the customers, this isn't the place for them. And we can find a way to exit them out so that they can find a home that's more suitable for what they're doing.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, John. You actually suit in we have a group of CEOs in London that came together and they talk about leadership, the same level of experience as you. They are not looking for new business. Like you said, you kept down the tools long time ago. So I believe that's a group that I will actually want to introduce you to. But let me ask you, because when we work for this long, 30 years and up, sometimes we start thinking about retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, retirement starts thinking about it when the business stops being fun. I don't know if that's the same thing for you. Do you feel like it is going to stop being fun? And how is the retirement playing out in this for you?
There's Lucy, there's a lot of talk post COVID, during COVID, about fun, happiness, fulfillment, all these things. And I have to say, I never considered any of those things. I just considered what my duty was to, work hard for myself, my family, my company, and take on worthy responsibility. And I don't I don't get up in the morning and boy, I'm excited about work. Maybe some days I am a little bit more than other days. But that's not what drives me. What drives me is that what we're doing is worthy. And that as I get older, I'm able to look back and think, boy, you really put in the effort, not just in the first couple of years and then you glided, or, I just turned 59. So, traditionally you would think that somebody around 60, 65 would think about retiring. Um, at some point, I probably have to have a plan in place that brings somebody else in to do some of what I do. But honestly, the staff here would probably tell you they would be better off if I didn't show up each day. So I'm not sure if I even need to do that. But I will need to exit at some time, and it won't be probably based on fun. It'll probably be based on some life change. I've always been very good about balancing, and I shouldn't say balancing life and work. That's not the right term that I use. The term I use is integrating them. So, I have grandchildren now, and, they come here to the shop and they work and pick up screws and, do some plumbing around my house and whatever we need to do. And it's just, we integrate things. That's what we do. My daughter is an entrepreneur herself, and she probably learned that because we went to job sites after dinner to check out what the staff had been doing, and, finished off whatever work needed to be done with the flashlight or the car lights, when I felt we needed to get something done. So, I don't really think of my work as anything that needs to be fun. I think it needs to be fulfilling. It needs to be worthy. It's, what we're doing is helping other people, whether it's their homes that are broken, or whether we go into factories and do some work adding machinery and wiring up things. So as long as those two things are there, and I'm physically able to do it and mentally able to direct the company, I don't see it at this point when I would stop.
Wonderful. Thank you. You're such a role model for everybody, John. Thank you for even more, being a role model for your family. I know your wife runs some business, your daughter now runs some business. So thank you
Yeah,
so much. Because
yeah,
I did support entrepreneurship, I like what you're doing. But let's go to the key thing that didn't make me think that we should feature you on this TV show. You decided to take it to the next level. You decided to talk to the young people about joining skilled trade and why it's important to do that, because sometimes people are only thinking about academics and going to university and then what. John, I've seen some people going to university to study history. There are others who have gone to study English, and English is their first language. So then, of course, as you said, they just come out with that. So please tell us why you decided to motivate young people and what exactly are you doing?
sure. Yeah. Now, I will say though, I don't necessarily see an issue with learning history, with learning geography, art, music, all of those things. Engineering is important, but so is sort of putting your life into perspective and what you do. And some of the best ways to do that is to know how people have lived their lives, not just 10 years ago, but 1,000 years ago. So I think that is important. But the message that I wanted to get out. Recently wrote a book, and it's called Trade Up. It's about young people, a fictional story about a couple of people getting into the trades. And it actually started, I probably wrote the first two chapters about 5 or 6 years ago and just shelved it. And it was me kind of coming to grips with a conversation or talk I gave at one of the local high schools. We would go from, they would take an electrician and maybe a hairdresser and a plumber and a car mechanic, and you would just go around from class to class as they had it set up and talk to various groups of students about getting into whatever trade or job you were in, and you told them about your life. And so I ended up, and this particular day I was by myself, and I ended up back in the day there was something called grade 13. So at the end of grade 13 you went off to university, and at that point everybody was going to university. So I ended up, for whatever reason, in this grade 13 math class, and it was not just a regular math class, it was the advanced math class. And I didn't share with you at the beginning, but it was math and chemistry that I failed in grade 12. And I had a 44 in chemistry, 46 in math. And the only way to graduate at least grade 12 was to get a passing mark in one of them. And I thought, I'll take a chance on the math teacher. It was a lady. I went to her and said, could you give me a 50? And we negotiated that I would not show up at grade 13 and take a math course because she would be found out. So she passed me. I went off, and I fulfilled my duty of not studying math anymore. But so here I ended up in this advanced math class. So these were all the people that probably were way smarter than I was at math, even at that age. And I asked who was going to go to the trades, and of course no hands went up. And so I have got a 45-minute time slot to fill here, and I thought, I'm just not going to sit here. So I said, well, let's do a math example. Let's just assume, and at that point I had an 18-year-old student that had left high school at the end of grade 12. He was an electrical apprentice. His name was Jordan, and he had a twin brother that was going to university. It was a bit of a split test, right? And I said, well, let's just assume that one of you is Jordan's brother, and you're going off to university, and he's going into the trades, and let's look at how the money breaks down over a number of years. And we wanted to pick a career, and we chose as a group the poor teacher lady was sitting in the classroom, and everybody knows what a teacher does. It's sort of the pathway to get there. So one side of the ledger, we put on Jordan's wages that he would earn, because he would be earning an hourly wage for the first of 5 years of his apprenticeship. And then of course the student that's going off to teachers college would have to do a 4-year BA first. So anyway, we scripted out Jordan's 5 years of earnings in his apprenticeship, which amounted to a good bit of money, and the same 5, in fact it's 6, so 4 years of a BA, and then the 5th and 6th years of teachers college before you're qualified to be a teacher. So we said, okay, well, let's give Jordan that 6th year, because he gets to work while that person goes to their 2nd year of teachers college. And then the teacher starts off what their salary is, and then of course Jordan is a journeyman at that point for his 2nd year, so what he makes. And then we added it up, and it was, and the kids actually helped us with, the teacher was able to share a little bit of her salary, and her expenses from school. So the number was shocking, how much further ahead the journey person was. And I just share with you, that was a number of years ago, but today, when we finished the book, that number is $370,000 in favor of the person that went into the trades. So that's what the message in the book is. I wrote the first two chapters, and I knew a whole whack of lessons I wanted these young people to be learning based on what kids learn when they come here. And I'm not a writer. So I said, let's hire a writer. So Lisa Brandt and I worked on this together. And then we put the book and put it out there. But I will say that I'm not necessarily against university. What I'm against is the debt based. So spending the first 4 years of, your 18 to 22-year-old life accumulating debt, essentially not getting on with life and earning. And then you're a 23-year-old person like I was. I was no degree, but, this person is not much different. They're 16 years to pay back is the average debt, I think, of $26,000. So you're almost 40. Most of them won't have the jobs they expect to have. And I was just tired of seeing kids like that come in after a couple of years of university and deciding they wanted to get into the trades. They should have been here 2 years before that.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. And so then you called it trained up. Why buy a job when you can start a career?
That's right.
So, and this career might be cheaper than, the debt they come out with. So I wish that more and more young people and their parents can find you, and I'll try as much as possible to get them to know you so that you can help them. And I think the Minister for Skilled Trade, as in Ontario, has been promoting this, skilled trade, and
Yes,
they
that's
make
right.
more money in it and all that. So you are doing the right thing, and I'm hoping that more people will listen to you, John.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's the name Trade Up. We went over dozens of options, and why we stuck on that was really that's your career journey, no matter what you do. Whether you start off, I had a young lady I dated when we were younger. She started off as a 15-year-old in McDonald's, and she traded up, and now I think she and her husband own 7 or 8 McDonald's franchises. So that's trading up. So you can do the same thing in the trades. You'll do the same thing in any career you get into. Just don't start trading up with a deficit of hundreds of thousands of dollars, which it is if you go to university as opposed to a trade.
Thank you. Thank you. I really like that. But I wanted to ask you, as we come to an end, do you have any few more questions or some? Do you have? I will repeat that. As we come to an end, John, thank you so much for your time. Do you have any final words for our viewers?
Sure. So let's just assume the average viewer is somebody that's interested in business and has got that dream that they want to have a business, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if I'm just going to use myself as an example. So had I not had that backstop of a supportive wife that was working, it would have come crashing down much sooner, and probably could have led to some very bad behaviors. You take a 25-year-old that isn't doing well in life and had some student debt, who knows what would have happened. So what I think people should really think clearly about, it's okay to quit stuff. If something isn't going well and it doesn't look like, at the very least, you put a pause on this business. Maybe you start again in a couple of years. Don't dig yourself in so far that the only thing that is left is, bankruptcy, divorce, and, estranging yourself from your family, your children particularly. That's not a good thing. So, everybody knows it's going to be hard work. I don't want to say, oh, work hard. That's not appropriate to tell people. They should expect that that's going to be the way it is. You have to be realistic. You're certainly not going to knock it out of the park. My wife and I were and still continue to be quite frugal with our money. My wife more so than most. But there's things we do spend money on, and that's okay too. But we certainly didn't spend money that we didn't have years ago, and we were very careful with that. And probably the last thing I will say is joining any kind of a group where there's people that are as or more successful than you, whether it happens to be a Rotary Club, whether it happens to be a business networking group, and be very careful about advice. My feeling over the years is conventional wisdom is probably not right. If somebody says something that you've been hearing for 20 years and it's constantly, just listen closely to that. It's probably not the right advice for you at that moment. And certainly don't spend your time studying billionaires and their lifestyles to find out the secrets of how to turn your 1 truck operation into a 2 truck operation. That's not where you're going to find it. You're going to find it in the advice of somebody that's got 4 locations of what location you're trying to get somebody that's just a little bit better than you, and try to emulate that person as best you can.
Thank you so much, John. We really value your advice and we might be able to bring you more often. So thank you for that. Our viewers, thank you so much for watching.